Ken, you guys ready to do the magic? Oh, look at this screen while we're all sitting. We got a couple empty seats, so next go around we got to fill these other empty seats. Ken looks really small. He's like in the elementary school level. Got to get bigger out there, dude.
Yeah, I feel like I'm sitting in a high chair, like
It's pretty darn funny, and I hope this is great. So that's perfect. All right, so we're gonna get rolling on here. Welcome everybody that's on the call, and those
recording in progress.
There you go. Welcome everybody who's on the call, and there will be many people reviewing this later. We record this for future events, and it'll be on the Business Transition Council website. This is maximizing business value and ensuring a successful exit. And this is for all business owners who will one day leave their business. So if you're a business owner that's never going to leave their business for all eternity, let me know. I'd like to write your story up. But other than that, we all end up leaving at some point. And I like it when it's successful. That's my world. So whether you're currently a business owner or planning to become one, or someone who's supporting someone who is, and we have a lot of consultants at the Business Transition Council, you made the right choice to spend some time with us. Today we're going to break down some myths and share some reality surrounding what truly drives value and how it can make a huge difference in your success. So we got a really great team. I'm going to introduce them real quickly, and you'll get to learn more about them. Joey Brannon is a CPA, and he's founder of the Axiom Strategic Consulting, and Joey brings a servant's heart to his work. I know him very, very well from his love for helping people. He helps closely held business owners reconnect with their vision and overcome frustrations and struggles that they often face while working to achieve their goals. Ken Pomela is an amazing guy. He's a seasoned entrepreneur. He's an investor. He's a founder with a proven track record of success. He's CEO of RevStar, and Ken has led the charge in delivering innovative technology solutions, and his entrepreneurial ventures include founding platforms such as Monocle and Recruited. Did I say those both right?
Yeah, you did.
All right. And then Jeff Jackson, I just pulled a little smattering out of all your LinkedIn and summaries out there. Jeff Jackson brings us knowledge for his years of expertise in his powerful EOS worldwide systems. Powerful, great stuff out there. He'll share with you a copy of Traction, I'm sure, if you get to meet him face to face. Jeff helps business owners achieve what they truly want from their business and from their life. I'm your host, Brian Stevens, with Legacy Business Sales and Valuations. We serve the lower middle market transition of ownership in construction, engineering, life sciences, and medical businesses. And then lastly, we just have the overall Business Transition Council. Michael Valdez, and you can see him up there on the screen, I think at the top maybe still, but one of the co-founders of this business and this organization, been in meetings since 2004. And then there's everybody on this group is amazing that's part of it, and we'll give a thumbs up to Clone Solutions as well. They keep us going, keep us electric, keep us recorded, and keep us organized in great ways out there. So we're going to get going with that. Everybody ready and good? Yeah? All right, I'm going to throw some questions out. This is interactive, so if people have questions or inputs or things that they'd like to share, we'd like to hear from the group as well. Ask questions as you go. But we're going to create this sort of in a question seminar, and I'm going to direct it to one of you. But then, I'll start off with Ken. But if Jeff or Joey, you have some input, let's go from there. But I'll direct it one at a time, and we'll go and see how this rolls. So, Ken, from your experience, what are some critical but often overlooked factors that significantly impact business market value?
So me personally, when I'm looking at a business to potentially buy, I'm looking at where is the risk, and then where is this something kind of unique and proprietary that builds a moat or a barrier to entry. So I think the first thing is looking at your customer base. Do you have a high concentration of your revenue in one or two customers? That's very risky, right? You lose one customer, I buy your business, now half of my money's gone. So that's super important. If it's a strategic buyer and you want to sell to a bigger company in your industry, the type of customer might matter. So maybe you focus on SMB and you want to sell to a company that focuses on enterprise. So it's inherently not going to have as much value to them. The other thing I think would be, the revenue model that you have. If you have some kind of long-term contracts, if you have reoccurring subscriptions. And I think a lot of people think of subscription as just a term of like a software as a service company, but you can have this in traditional businesses too, right? Professional services, you can have 3-year engagements, you can have retainers versus bill by the hour. If you can sell in retail versus direct to consumer on a subscription model. So it's not just kind of in that software as a service realm. So that, that lowers the risk, right? If you have long-term contracts, if you have reoccurring revenue, it makes it worth more to a buyer. And then the other thing is if you have a really solid brand, if you have any kind of intellectual property, so if you have some proprietary technology that your business uses that gives you a competitive advantage, or if you have this really well-known brand name in the industry that makes it harder for somebody else to just come in and compete with you. Those are all things that I'm looking at that signals to me that, hey, this business is maybe worth a higher valuation versus a lower valuation.
Guys,
I think
go ahead.
those are definitely key drivers. I think another one to talk about is just execution, right? And showing year-over-year growth, improvements in profitability, top line revenue. When you and you definitely have to make the distinction, and Ken mentioned it, right? You have financial buyers and strategic buyers, and they have sometimes dramatic differences in how they look at a business and what they're willing to pay for. And a lot of owners that I've worked with in the past are kind of hoping for what we would call stupid money, right? Folks that'll just pay them for like the future, pay them for, well, there's so much opportunity. See, we just haven't been able to execute on it. They'll buy you, but they're not going to pay you for the execution that they bring for that future improvement, right? And so as a business owner, if you can continually execute, set your strategy and just continue to set them up and knock them down quarter after quarter, year after year, you're an attractive business, right? Because there's that stability. And then whether it's a financial or a strategic buyer, now they come and they add their special sauce to your special sauce and it blows up. But too many business owners are want to be paid for the future improvements on their business that the new owner is actually bringing, and very few buyers are willing to share that future revenue, that future profitability.
And how you grow that revenue is sometimes important too, right? So if you as a founder are doing a lot of your sales and your business comes through your personal network and your relationships, that's much different than, hey, I have a really repeatable lead generation process and a really great sales funnel, deals that will close within the next 3-6 months, right? It's a lot different when if you leave, there may not be new revenue coming into this business either, right? Because I'm not just buying on what you have today; it's on the ability that it's going to perform in the future, and that's where you get these multiples, right? And why you get larger multiples for businesses that have more predictable revenue.
Yeah, it's got to be a machine, right? It can't just be onesie twosie chasing it. Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff, can you go back real quick and say something
on
about
the difference between the financial and the strategic buyer? Because I don't want to take for granted that that's well understood. But what does a financial deal look like, or financial buyer look like versus a strategic buyer?
I'll probably start with the strategics. Strategics are in your business or they're adjacent to your business, right? So they have a business that they're operating and they're buying your business to add revenue, geography, customer, product, whatever. They've got a strategic reason for buying your business to make their business better. Financial buyers can be private equity. They could be, I've got clients that started a search fund, right? Graduated from Harvard, came out, raised some money, and spent a couple of years looking for a business and bought the business. They knew nothing about the business. They're completely a financial buyer. They're usually doing, I don't know, even know this back from the 80s, LBO, right? It's a leverage buyout. And so they're not operating a business that they're buying you to add on to. They're specifically in the market to buy a business to maybe run themselves or to put together, and they have more of a financial strategy behind the types of businesses they buy, why they're buying them, and what their strategy is.
Perfect.
Well, what's interesting, I was not here last week for the storm and all the chaos because I was on this 2-week trip that had been planned for a long time. We were out of the country and I was traveling with 4 other business owners. And I can tell you from just watching these folks on their cell phones from Sunday through Thursday or Sunday through Friday of last week, whose business has the higher valuation. Because there's one individual in particular who was on the phone constantly. And it was very clear that everything in the business revolved around that individual. All the major decisions, all the core knowledge, all the relationships that needed to be leveraged to get ready for the storm and then to start the recovery after. Whereas the other three business owners I was traveling with spent very little time. They all had a solid number two back here in the States who was taking care of everything. And I think that that can sometimes get overlooked when you're getting ready to sell a business or you have ideas for exit, is who is, if you're suddenly out of the loop and inaccessible, does that have a huge impact on the business? Or is there somebody there who can continue to carry on? And Ken was talking about this as well, where, you know, for a lot of small businesses, the owner is still the salesperson in chief. And if there's no new revenue coming in because you're getting ready to go sip umbrella drinks on the beach, you know, that's going to have a detrimental impact on the valuation. So I think the story that you tell during due diligence, or the story that you're able to tell during due diligence about what it's going to look like the week after closing, when your office is cleaned out and you're on your consulting contract and you're coming in maybe 1 or 2 days a week for the next year, if you can tell a story that substantively describes that there's not going to be a major shift in how the decisions are made, there's not going to be a major shift in how sales get done, there's not going to be a major shift in how relationships are handled because you've been able to pull yourself out of all those critical areas, it's going to give a buyer, one, it's going to shorten the closing cycle drastically because they're not going to have to kick over as many rocks. Two, it's going to have a higher likelihood that the people you care about who are still in that business are going to get ongoing employment contracts, probably some golden handcuffs to keep them involved. And I think most business owners really want that for the people that are going to stay in the business. But it's definitely also going to increase the price you're going to get.
That's a great
And
analogy, too.
Sometimes the type of buyer matters too. Like a pure financial buyer won't like that you're doing all the sales as a founder, but a strategic buyer who has a large sales team, maybe they're just more, you know, focused on your execution and your ability to help add product to, you know, to their existing, you know, what their sales team can sell, right? So sometimes finding the right buyer is important. So understanding who you want to sell to and where you would get the most value is important as well.
Yeah.
It's a great point because it could be a case where you may need to exit, and picking the right kind of buyer can enable you to exit where it's just not going to happen. If you don't have a sales team, then you need to find a buyer who's already got a sales team because they're going to see value in your workforce in place. They're going to see value in your inventory. They're going to see value in your customer list. If you've already got a sales team, maybe you've got some options. Or like you said, Ken, if you decide to go a financial route, a lot of those folks may not be able to continue because they're just they're an easily replaceable resource with what's already in place at the buyer.
Cool.
Hey, Brian, Manny has his hand up. See that?
Yeah.
Yeah, this question is to the panel members. We're talking about strategic versus non-strategic buyers. Usually when that happens, you know, like I'm pretty sure strategic buyers, they pay a lot more money to buy a company than the non-strategic buyers. Usually what is the difference there? Is it multiples of like twice, thrice, 10 times? What is that?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. There's a lot of huge PE firms with tons of money, right? It just depends on the scenario. So for let's say for me, and I started a micro private equity firm, and if you don't know what that is, it's business is 5 million and less in revenue, right? So if I was a larger PE firm and I was looking at a roll up and I had already invested in some really large company and your business was, let's say, smaller, 5-10 million in revenue, and I was just going to add you into the existing, play that I have with this company, that might change, how I evaluate your business. I may not care that you have a sales team in place. And you have to remember too, larger businesses inherently sell for larger multiples. So I can take your $5 million business that maybe has a 2x multiple on top line revenue, buy it into and put it in this larger business, right? Roll it up. That's already a 4 to 5x in their multiple. So I've just in that transaction, I've added 2-3x on top of what your business is worth. So you have to think about that too when no matter if it's, a roll up directly with a strategic buyer or it's a PE firm that's rolling you into a strategic play. Those are good questions to ask. Like, what multiple am I coming into in this acquisition? Because that does change the value, right, of your business. If it's me right now, I'm just looking for more turnkey businesses, right, smaller businesses. The multiples aren't that high, right, because they're 5 million and under. And there's also, I look at a lot of deals and there's a lot of key man risk in those deals because normally at that size, the founder is doing a lot. So there's some, when you get to a certain point in revenue, there's, like I said, there's inherently larger multiples involved. But yeah, I wouldn't think that strategic buyers always have more money. I think it just depends on the size of the buyer.
Yeah, and I think, Manny, if you're getting to what a buyer is willing to pay for a business, more often than not, a strategic buyer can afford to pay more because they're going to have synergies, right? Cost synergies specifically, right? Like the HR team, the finance team, even sometimes the sales team may be eliminated in the acquisition. And so they're going to buy that business and fold it into the business they have. And they'll have economies of scale across a lot of the functions of the business. They'll have greater buying power to acquire inventory and things like that. And so those cost synergies translate into their ability to pay more for a business a lot of times. I know the deals that I've worked on where we go to auction, we're looking for those strategics for that reason, because they're going to make more money because they've got the cost synergies. They're able to pay more, willing to pay more. Not always the case. I've also come across specific niches, industry niches like logistics, where it's kind of a captive logistics arm for a larger company. And they'll buy a $5 million business, like Ken says, that, might go 2-3 times EBITDA, a small business making less than $1 million a year, around $1 million a year in EBITDA. They'll buy it for 5 or 7, right? Because it just folds into their logistics network. And so they can pay more for those businesses than a financial buyer that's strictly running on what's my financial model, right? What is my investment thesis? Do I have a fund that's going to, investors that want out in 5 years? Just a very different approach to how they make money buying that business.
All right, hey Jeff,
Thank you.
let's go. Let's keep going. Rolling to another question. I'm gonna throw this one at you, Jeff, out there. How long before taking a business to market should somebody prepare? We're talking about, Ken brought up some ideal situations. Joey, hey, it would be great if you had all these things and, not one high concentration of customers, but not everybody's like that, right? A lot of times, our brothers and sisters that own businesses have some ability to make them more marketable. That's what we're talking about. When should somebody start? Do they do a week before, 20 years before? Start with the end in mind. Franklin Covey, give me an idea how to take this conversation out.
Yeah, the flippant answer is day one of the business, right? Always be building your business, because buyers look at a business without emotion. Well, not all of them look at it without emotion, but most buyers look at it nuts and bolts and not emotionally. They're not in love with your business, right? And so they're going to look at it and see, how is it operating?
Right.
And almost 15 years in consulting for small, medium businesses, I'm going in and fixing things. Had they just done it thinking of scale and thinking of the future and made decisions 3 years ago, they wouldn't need to pay me to come in and fix it, because they already would have been operating like that. And so even if you're never thinking of selling, building a solid business that's attractive to a buyer will it basically means you're running a better business. So it's got to be from day one. So that's kind of the flippant answer. My more jaded answer comes from working in M&A advisory, where
Yeah.
sit down with a business owner and they're done. Right, the last 2 years have just kicked their butt, and they're just done, and they want out, and they want 10 times EBITDA for a small business that's not operating well, and you've
Right.
there it's too like you just can't be in that position. So if you've run your business for 20 years, I would say 2 years out, depending on the business, right? The 2 years out, you want to be able to establish that this business works very, very well. Here's my trend and my proof that it's repeatable, that this business just operates really, really well year after year. And you need a couple of few years of that trend coming into a sale. And so that has to do with just the running the business well. And then when you're about a year out, start the tax planning, right? Start thinking about what type of buyer do I want? What do I want to happen with my employees, right? All the things that are important to you relative to your legacy, start thinking about before you sit down at the table with anybody or to go to market. What do you really want to get from your business on an exit? What do you want personally, financially? And what do you want your future to look like, which is one of the most difficult things for entrepreneurs to deal with post sale. And then how do you want your legacy protected after the business is gone? I've got clients that are like, I don't care. It's done. I've got others that are very passionate about what happens to the name on that wall that's been up there for 20 years after the sale.
Amen.
It's interesting. I'll say that I'm firmly in Jeff's camp of day one, right? But the interesting thing is, it shouldn't be a hard case for you to make to a business owner, because the same things that you would do, it's like the valuation of businesses typically comes down to two factors: earnings and some kind of multiplier that's associated with that. Well, a lot of the business owners that today are just like, I'll think about sale tomorrow. What are they focused on? They're focused on earnings, because that's where their distributions come from. That's where their paycheck comes from. That's where their ability to live the lifestyle they want comes from. So they're already focused on earnings. What we're trying to do in a lot of cases is argue you need to be focused on the factors that are going to drive a higher multiple way earlier in the process. And so they go, well, I can worry about that later. That's, I'll do that when I get ready for sale. But I think what they're missing, the case that we need to be making for them, is the benefits of doing the things that Jeff's talking about that are going to drive the multiple. Those have real world impacts on your quality of life. I just described it a few minutes ago. It's being able to leave the country for 2 weeks and not worry about what's happening at home, because you have a well-run business that's just executing what Ken talked about. So, I think we should be able to make the case better, more clearly, that whether you want to sell in the next 2 years or not, certainly if you're going to sell in 2 years, there's things that have to be happening. But if it's farther than that, your life is going to improve significantly just getting ready for the sale, even if that's 20 or 30 years from now. You're going to be a happier, more effective, more productive, more fulfilled business owner if you're building a business, like Jeff said, to scale. Don't think about it in terms of just the paycheck I'm going to earn today.
Good. I'm going to throw that back at Joey, and we all help create some of these questions out there, but you have the one I think is relevant right now about owners expect value to be going to come. The value is going to come down to sales and cash flow, and I just need to put my head down and generate cash. And why should I spend more time working with consultants? Why should I spend precious time on this other stuff consultants are always pushing me on? I've seen two businesses in the same industry basically earning the same amount of money worth entirely different amounts of value when it goes to sell. Can you chat a little bit more about moving on with that, since you've sort of touched that already?
Yeah. So if you go back to that, basic, it's not always this simple, but the most basic rule of thumb valuation comes down to earnings times some multiple. And so if you've got a business that's a $5 million business and it's doing 15 to 20% margins, maybe you're kicking out $750 million a year in earnings. And the question then is, well, what is the multiple that's going to be applied to that? Am I going to get 2 times that number? Am I going to get 3 times that number? Am I going to get 6 times that number? And your industry is going to have a range that it typically trades in. So the world has kind of defined, the industry has defined maybe what's the top end that you're going to be able to get from this business. So if let's just say that it's $1 million to make the math simple. I've got $1 million of earnings coming out of the business. I would make the case that if I'm going to spend my time, effort, and energy working on the business and trying to get the most bang for my buck, I ought to be spending time not on driving that $1 million to 1.5 million or 2 million. It can be pretty difficult to double the net income in a business.
Right.
I think the better bang for your buck is to spend time on making that 2 times multiplier a 2.5 or a 3 or a 4. And you can get a lot of, you can leverage the ability of a leadership team to drive that value in a pretty short amount of time. Now, you have to prove it out because nobody's going to buy the business on 1 year's worth of performance. But if you can start to put a leadership team in place that can run the business, whether you're there or not, if you've got good systems and processes so that customers are having a repeatable experience, if you can generate a consistent flow of new customers and increase the long-term value of existing customers, and if you're running business on a good balance sheet and have smart debt on the books, instead of just undercapitalizing the business and run it off the bank's line of credit. If you could do all those things, it could take a year to a year and a half to really kind of clean the house and get the housekeeping done. But then if you can execute on that for 2 or 3 years and start to prove a track record, that intangible value is going to go up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guess what? The other thing that's going to happen after 2 or 3 years is that $1 million is going to start to increase as well. So you're actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I think the thing that, and I get it, I've been there as a small business owner, worried about, going to the mailbox saying, I hope there's a check in here so that I can make payroll today. I've been through those times, and it's very easy to get myopically focused, tunnel vision on, we just have to make more money. But if you're at a point where you're cash flowing the business, whether it's $100,000 on the bottom line or $1 million on the bottom line or $4 million on the bottom line, if you're not working on the things that are going to drive the intangible value of the business and increase that multiplier, you're just working yourself to death for not a lot of return. And, that's where systems and processes and leadership teams and good sales and marketing plans really start to shine.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think this is a scenario where the operational efficiency makes the difference, right? So if the top line revenue is the same, whose profit margins are better, right? Who's utilizing, if you're, let's say, manufacturing, of course, a company with automation is more valuable than a company that's still relying solely on people to do the work, right? Or, in today's world, it's AI, right? Like white collar jobs or professional companies are going to be looking at AI for automation. So it's the same thing. If if your profit margins are better because you're more efficient, that's what's going to separate you from the business next door. And I think that, the paying the consultants thing is if you know how to achieve that operational efficiency yourself, or if you know how to build out some proprietary technology that makes you more efficient, or if you can do all these things yourself, that's great. But most people don't know what they don't know, right? So hiring a consultant and understanding that that's an investment into the future value of your business is important.
Love it. Jeff, anything on that?
Mic drop.
All right.
You guys killed it. That was awesome.
Well said. All right, I'm going to roll to our next event out there. I'm going to throw this back in your court, Ken. What are some of the most important, most common errors business owners make when assessing their own company value? What that myopathy that we have with ourselves?
I think Joey brought it up earlier, the multiples for the industry you're in. So there's a lot of nuance in business, right? So a lot of times it's like, well, okay, this person's selling a widget and they're selling it in a storefront and they're making $5 million versus, another company who's selling it direct to consumer or on a subscription model, making $5 million, right? So how you do it matters. So it's, a lot of people, well, I'm in this industry, this company sold for a 10x multiple, so should I, right? But there's a lot of differences in how the sausage is made that will separate one business's value from another.
Yeah.
I think the other one is, and I'm not a finance guy, I'm a founder, so I sort of empathize with this. But when you start a business, of course, for you, being the founder, it's invaluable, right? There's a lot of emotion. I think it might have been Joey who said this earlier. Maybe it was you, Jeff. There's a lot of emotion there. So for you can't look at it from that lens, right? Especially with a financial buyer, they're purely looking at it from a finance standpoint. So, you have to be realistic and kind of look at your baby and with I think not through the mom goggles, so to speak, and
Right.
and where you're actually at, right? And so these are, I think these are important things that a lot of people overlook because they're just talking to their friend that sold their business or somebody else in the industry, and it's like, well, oh yeah, I put a lot of work into this. This other company sold for this much, so you can't make those decisions just purely based on kind of the surface level things you're seeing and your own feelings about your business. I think the other thing is timing, right? You look at selling a business this year, much different than selling it 2 years ago. There was people getting crazy multiples. Right now people are buying more on value than speculation. If you're doing something interesting in AI, you can get kind of these crazy multiples. But right now, just with the way the economy is, and maybe it's different in certain markets, but definitely looking at market trends and the economic climate, you want to sell when things are good, right? I want to buy when things are when things are a little bit lower, right? So for me, these are interesting times to be looking at businesses. But if I'm selling, I want to sell when my market's doing well, when it's trending upward, when the economy's doing well. So this is why some of it's preparing ahead of time, some of it's just kind of keeping an eye on where the industry's going. So instead of this perfect storm of being prepared and having good timing.
Yeah. I'm going to throw in something real quick out there. Since most of what we're talking about are privately held transactions, the information about the marketplace isn't always as accurate. And there's a lot of business owners that sort of remember it up at a better perspective and multiples. And I've had at least 2 situations where it's like, he did not sell that for 11 times. I promise you, I can't go into the details, but that's not a reality. But people want to share things that are not always accurate, and usually it's a lot of misinformation. But anyway, anybody else on that want to go back to that process?
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Joey.
I was going to say, just speaking to Brian's point, we've come out of an extraordinary, probably 3 or 4 years here where there have been a lot of roll-ups. There have been a lot of financial transactions. And every client that I have gets calls every week or 2 or 3, maybe. They're getting probably 2 calls a month. Just people trying to bird dog deals. These are business development folks for financial buyers. And the way that their sales process works is they'll throw out teaser multiples. Even I've sat on 90-minute pre-due diligence conferences on the phone with, a VP or a regional director, and they'll throw out 12x, 17x, 18x, and it's really hard to get those numbers out of their head. Even though they heard them, 3 years ago, we're looking at $1 million EBITDA, and they go, oh, so we're worth 13 million. I'm like, no, you're not worth 13 million. So it's like, to Ken's point, there's a lot of, people believe what they want to believe, right? And so my admonition to them is like data. Like, what does the data say? And what you're saying, Brian, is the same. Like, unfortunately, there's not a lot of data out there on these private transactions unless you have a network like this where you can get some of that insight from real deals that have been happening among your colleagues. And that's a tremendous benefit of a group like this. But I just find it so hard to get them to let go of those teaser rates that they've heard about over the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Or rumors, rumors of who got what. And well, and as a business owner, when you sell, there's some pride involved, right? And so when you're talking, you might have got 6x, You might say
Oh,
that, you know, like just the,
Yeah.
I would add that, like, get help. Have an advisor that takes you to market and can navigate this stuff. Unless you've done deals and you know the marketplace, which most entrepreneurs don't, get help. Hire an advisory firm. I know the numbers are big sometimes, and you think, why would I pay that much? It's like when you buy a house or sell your house and they're charging you 6%. Sometimes you're like, I could have done this myself. Get help, right? Go to auction,
Yeah.
right? Get as many valid offers and letters of interest, and have somebody that gets to the network of these people, kind of to Ben's question there, like, where do you find these buyers? Well, they're going to be finding you. If they're, you should be getting calls if you're a business owner. I think Joey or Ken said, 2 or 3 calls a week sometimes. But the mistake I see a lot of business owners make, or not a lot, but a handful make, is finding something, answering one of those calls and going with that person because they like them. It's not bad to do that, and you may get everything out of your business that you deserve. So I'm not saying it's a failure mode, but why wouldn't you go to market, go to auction, solicit interest, offers, right? Get to letter of intent, have multiples so that you can stack them up against each other and find your perfect buyer. It doesn't have to be the one paying the most, because a lot of times it's better to not go with the person paying the most. But have options when you're selling your business. Don't just go with one offer or one potential buyer.
Yeah, I think one of the things that sellers can do pre those conversations, that's money and time well spent, is get somebody to call your baby ugly. Hire an advisor. If you've got a good attorney, if you've got a mentor, if you've got somebody who's been through the process and they're not interested, that it has to be somebody who's willing to tell you things that you don't want to hear. That's where, that's what you're paying for if you pay an outside advisor to come call your baby ugly. But some people have access to some really close friends who care about them a lot, and they've got experience in this area. They've sold businesses before, or they're very successful, or they run transactions, and they're not afraid of hurting their feelings, and they'll tell them the things that they don't want to hear. And it's so much better for you to hear that from somebody who's on your side of the table, who cares about you, who wants to see you succeed, so that you can go into, and if you're on a short time frame, the worst that can happen is you're going to go into this eyes wide open. If you spend that time having somebody tell you where all the warts and wrinkles and skeletons in the closet are, at least the rocks that are going to get kicked over in due diligence, because they are going to get kicked over. Like the other part of this process, if you embark on it, it's incredibly disruptive. You're going to spend days, if not a couple of weeks, getting documents over. You're going to answer questions till you're just so sick and tired of seeing that caller ID or that email address come up in your inbox. Due diligence is a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
And if there's stuff that you have just looked at through rose-colored glasses, they're going to force you to take those glasses off. And every time they force you to do that, it's a ding in the purchase price. So it's much better to just have somebody come in and say, tell you all the things. We untrust business owners all the time. They pay us to do it. We try to do it in a very caring and loving and compassionate way. But if they don't hear it from us, they're going to hear it from a buyer, and then it's going to cost them a lot more money than they spent trying to figure out what to fix.
Absolutely.
I'd say talk to the PE firms who, like, one that specializes in your size business or industry. I'm looking at deals all the time, right? Everybody does. They'll give you initial feedback. They might not jump in and help you, but they'll give you free advice,
right.
so to speak. So, like if somebody comes to me and they have a $500,000 business, that they're the one person doing the work, I'm probably not going to buy that, right? Because I'd be buying a job. But I would tell them, well, go to a strategic buyer, right? Your accounts are worth something to them. So you'll get that advice from most people. And I think everybody's willing to take a look at a deal, spend some time with you. Since some of the advice might be actionable, where it's like, if you did A, B, and C, then you can come back to a more of a hands-on consultant, right? But at least you're getting that feedback. And the earlier you do it, the better. And there's investment bankers. There's a lot of people. I'm sure Brian, even guys that are helping sell businesses, right? Will give you some of that advice and at least
Always.
point you in a direction.
Yeah, and don't forget the BTC. What brings us here today is a whole bunch of people that love business owners and want the best for them, and we'll spend that time to just sit down with you and help you work through all this, right? Trying to
Absolutely.
create billing for ourselves. We'll sit down and hear you out and point you in the right direction and help you out. That's why we exist at the BTC.
Yeah, not many questions that, given the unique group that we have, that can't be answered, or if they can't, they'll certainly find the answer. It's a pretty diverse group. We've got Ben had typed in a question. He asked if there's a central repository or place to find potential buyers or PE interests in different business types. Anybody want to take that on?
There's different places. There's online marketplaces. Flippa is one of them. There's a few others. You can list them on there. You can get bids and offers. Brian, I'm sure this is, there's guys like you, right? You have buyers in your network, right? So you can go to a broker. You can search for PE firms. So it depends on how you want to do it. Some people like the online technology marketplace, right? Others would prefer to work with Brian. He can help advise you. He can help connect you with the right buyer. Just the brokers are good for a more hands-on experience, right? More white glove. And going to the PE firm directly, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a little more legwork. You have to find the right ones. You probably send out a lot of messages and only get responses back from the ones that are interested. But if you kind of want to cut out the middleman, so to speak, and work with a potential buyer directly, there's nothing wrong with doing a Google search, popping into the website and filling out the contact form.
Yeah, absolutely. And we pay as part of our membership for one of the organizations. We have a database of well over 1,000 private equity groups, so we can do a search by, environmental cleanup and revenues and parts of the country and that sort of thing. And it's not the only place to go, but there are resources like what we have, but many others. I'm not trying to plug myself at all, but there are a number of databases. We pay to be part of those, but there's some good tools out there for anyone out there. So I appreciate the question. So, all right, we're up for another question to getting fresh out there. Jeff, you threw this one out there. How important is a business plan and strategy in preparing my business for the exit? Putting a plan together. You guru at that?
Yeah, we kind of touched on that before, right? The focus on execution and systematically year after year, quarter after quarter, just showing, hey, we put our plan together and then we achieve it. We put our plan together and we achieve it. And having that consistency and execution means your business is getting better and better every year, right? And so, and I loved when we talk about valuation and improvements in profitability versus multiple, and when you get the double whammy of them both coming together, when you're consistently executing well on the business, your margins should be improving, right? It's one of the things I focus on with every one of my clients. If you're in the bottom 50%, bottom 80%, frankly, of profitability for your industry, if your industry typically does 15% EBITDA and you're at 10, you're getting hit. You're getting a double hit. You're getting hit on a lower multiple, and you're getting that multiple on a lower amount of money, right? Lower amount of profit. Excuse me. When you can drive yourself to continue to execute operational efficiency, drive the business forward, and you're in a 15% average industry and you're doing 20 or more percent EBITDA, you get better multiple on a higher number. And so having the ability to, and you have to be able to show this, right? It can't be, well, we just executed really well. It's like, here's how we plan, here's how we execute. And when those two come together, it's extremely attractive to buyers to know, and there's people that will buy your distressed business. It's not what we're talking about. This is to get the most out of your business. It's highly attractive to buyers when you can execute well quarter after quarter.
I mean, I think the planning, I think a lot of people I talk to don't even make a business plan, right? They just get past that part and just start selling something. Or, so I think it is important because that's where you're outlining, am I going to bill by the hour? Am I going to do retainers? Am I going to do 3-year contracts, or am I going to just do pay as you go, right? So those are decisions you can make early on that help with the valuation in the long run. If you're starting a business now, am I going to hire this role over for writing some content, or am I going to use Chat GPT, right? So now there's a whole different I think things, a whole different set of things to think about with more AI and automation coming into more professional work. But those are things you can make those decisions early on, and even if they're year 5 decisions, at least you know where you're trying to head in the long run, and you're heading towards that higher valuation.
I also wouldn't take it for granted that the buyer has as good a system of planning and execution as you do. I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion that just because they're buying you, they've got their act together. I've had situations where the buyer actually adopted the acquired company's system for building the plan and executing it that Jeff is talking about. And it's like anything else. If these buyers, they're looking for returns on their investment. They're looking for great opportunities. If you're talking about a strategic buyer, somebody who's maybe in your same industry, wants to move to this state, they don't want to spend all the money to find a location, to put a workforce in, to have to find new suppliers for inventory. They just rather have a turnkey operation. And they start talking to you and your team, and you're able to show them all those things that Jeff is talking about. Here's our annual plan from 3 years ago. Here's our quarterly priorities. Here's the people who are responsible for it. Here's the metrics. Here's the dashboards that we're using for tracking it. They may have 2 or 3 potential candidates in the area that they're looking at acquiring, but they've just gotten into the equivalent of the brand new car at the dealership and the test drive, and they can't get that new car smell out of their nostrils, and your business just became the front runner, even though it might not have the best location, even though it might not have the highest earnings. It's got a team in place, it's got a system. And they're going, we could be doing this stuff too, and realizing the benefits in Georgia or Texas or wherever we're coming from. So I think that the story that you tell in terms of your history of executing can really help close the deal, and that people who want to buy you, they're going to give you a better multiple.
Yeah, that's a great point. A newer, smaller business may be scaling on technology, where a larger, older business did not have needed to do that. So, yeah, that's a really good point.
Amen. I think we're running down on a question. I'm going to throw a last one out, and then we're going to open up to the group. But Joey, owners say something like, "I've spent my life building this business, but can legacy be part of the transition, or do I need to go just for the highest value in my business out there?"
I think Ken talked about this earlier. Like some business owners, it's really important whose name is on the side of the building, and others, they've kind of given that up. My experience is that they all carry quite a bit of pride in the thing that they've spent 20 or 30 years building. And if they had their preference, they would all like some kind of legacy to continue. But what's interesting is when you talk to them and you start to get to what does legacy mean to you, it's a lot. Business owners are some of the most amazing, generous. They're some of the best people you ever meet. We all work with them, right? Absolutely. So I'm preaching to the choir. But when you start talking to them about legacy, I think for most businesses, what are you talking about? Now, if you're going into a purely financial transaction, all they want is your customer list, and they've got all the systems and processes are redundant, and some of your people are going to have to, take buyouts, and you're just going to take the biggest check. I think Jeff was saying too, like it's not always the best option to take the biggest check. And that may not come into play if it's a biggest check situation, but if it's something less than that, where you're saying, I want to pick the right buyer. A lot of times legacy comes down to the people who are going to continue working there and the influence that they're going to have on the new leadership that's taking over your business. That's legacy. Legacy is where the leaders that you have developed and the people that you have poured your heart and soul into are able to infect the acquiring organization and have a profound impact on the way that they do business. And I think as I talk to business owners about what they're looking forward to in the next decade, that's it. They're saying, I have a group of people here that for the last 15 or 20 years, I've tried to make them the best they can possibly be inside and outside the office. And I want to find a buyer where they're able, the ceiling just get raised on the opportunities that are available to them. And that's going to be my legacy. And I think that's a very admirable take on legacy. That to me is more impactful than just continuing to have your name on the side of a truck or a building.
I think some of it is too what's important to you. So for me, my customers and my team finding a good home would be important. And so I think, Jeff, you might have mentioned it earlier. If you're sometimes a strategic buyer might come in and cut your marketing staff, your HR team. So in that case, maybe a financial buyer would be better. So these are things to think about too in the exit. It's like where is whose hands am I putting my company in, and what does that mean?
Right.
So the other side, sometimes when a PE firm comes in, they can disrupt the culture, right? Because they're purely, okay, how do I make this more profitable? Like Jeff said earlier, I'm on a 5-year exit, right? So you have to find what is their intent for the business, right? Are they looking to flip the business? Are they looking to grow it in the long run? So those are questions you want to ask, not just because your name's on the side of it, but for me personally, it's like, I want to make sure that the people that I promised jobs to and the customers that we were doing good work for are going into the right hands.
Yeah, and I think that's where, what comes to mind for me is one type of buyer that we didn't touch on is family offices.
Mm-hmm.
Family offices typically have a very long hold period, and they're going to, so these are typically high net worth individuals that put together basically a PE firm or a family office to buy and operate businesses. And they typically have a much longer time frame for their hold because they're just looking to create this machine that continues to generate returns for the family office. And so they'll buy up a bunch of businesses, and their job is to support those businesses and let them operate for a long, long time. Those are awesome legacy protectors because those people care about the long-term needs for the business, where no matter how great the private equity guys are, when you're talking to them, they've got a platform that's burning, right? At some point, they're going to exit, and they're going to make different decisions around that. And the heartbreak for you as an owner that cares about your legacy is you're now sitting on the sideline. Maybe you've got some chips in the game, but you're sitting on the sideline, and the business is now out of your hands, and you don't have the influence. You don't have the ability to make the decisions. And it can be a big emotional struggle for a lot of business owners when they sell their business.
Yeah, definitely not all private equity buyers are the same, right? Like when I'm doing the size businesses I'm looking in is I want to hold these for a while, have someone operate them. Some folks are just trying to buy, flip, or buying into a roll up, right? So you definitely have to ask those questions. Not all private equity is the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And typically what you find is when they've established a fund with partners in that fund, those partners want their money back in the time frame that was not promised, but in the time frame that was spoken about. And there are private equity firms that will hold much longer because it's just a different investment thesis for them.
One of the vehicles that we really haven't talked about that is probably maybe one of the front runners for legacy is an ESOP. Right. And we're not going to get into ESOPs, but having the employees buy the business from you, not just the management group, but the employees in mass through a trust in a legit ESOP, is something that's becoming more and more popular. There's a huge resurgence in ESOPs because now the SBA can get involved in helping fund ESOPs. And what the good news is that everything we've been talking about building leadership teams, about building plans, about executing, about increasing multiples, all those things, like it's almost like exit plan agnostic, because if you're doing those things, what you have at the point in time that you're ready to step out is a plethora of options. Do I want a financial buyer? Do I want a strategic buyer? Do I want to go through do I want to do a partial sale? Do I want to do a management buyout? Do I want to do an ESOP? The thing that you have to have is a business that's going to run without you for any of that to result in the highest valuation for the business. So it also means that ESOPs are in play. And, if that's something that you're really interested in, if legacy is at the very, very top of your list, then talk to somebody who's got a lot of knowledge around ESOPs and hire an expert in that field to lay out what the possibilities are for you. Because we're seeing them come into play a lot more frequently than we did even 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a great succession plan, and in any succession plan is going to help the value of your business, right? The more you can delegate and not be involved. We talked about this earlier, and I mentioned key man risk, but if you can get your business to that state where you could exit, your employees could run it, no matter what route you go, ESOP, private equity, strategic buyer, you're going to have a lot of value. So yeah, if you build in that with that as like your end goal, I think you're in a good place no matter which route you go.
Absolutely. Okay, we're actually in overtime, and I promise not to do that. I know Michael said he had a question, and I'll throw this up for just a moment or two. And I know Ben had another question, but Michael, can you ask your question out there, and then we'll end the recording.
I have one.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have one last question to kind of help pull this together. We've done a fabulous job. This is a very articulate group, very, very deep knowledge, and I encourage everyone to reach out to all of them offline and interview them and talk to them. They could be great collaborative partners for you. But the first thing is we've done a fabulous job on exit planning. We've done a good job of talking about succession planning. We've talked about making businesses repeatable, sustainable, scalable, and ultimately transferable. But what I haven't heard, and I'd love the group to give us some feedback on this, is what about personal transformation or transition planning for the business owner, the family patriarch, that C-suite team? What are you doing to prepare them, or when should they start the preparation of personal transformation and transition planning?
Do you mean for life after the transaction, Michael?
Yes. When you no longer, quote, are getting up with that hat on, who are you and how do you beat the isms of life, right? And don't go down those deep paths and stay positive, hopeful, and collaborative and active in your community and in your life.
I see. I think purpose plays a big role there, right? So I think people who build their business for a greater purpose. So you see a lot of guys get into like philanthropy, right? After, this business was a vehicle to be able to solve some problem, economic empowerment, or helping out with underserved communities, right? And whatever your thing is, right? Helping out kids get into tech careers. Everyone's got something, right? But having that greater purpose, I think helps. If you can identify that early on in your why you do this, you won't have that kind of hole or gap when you sell the company. You'll kind of move on in whatever that mission looks like for you, and now you'll have the time and the finances to push forward towards that purpose.
Absolutely. That's primary. And what I've encouraged my clients as they've looked to exit is actually what they did for their business, do for them personally, right? And so I walk them through, what are your core values? Right? You had core values for the business, and they're probably similar to your personal core values. But what are your core values, right? What do you really value for your life? What do you want? What are your values? Then that why? Why do you exist as a human being for the next 20, 30, 40 years, however many years you have left? Why do you exist? And what is it that you really want to do? And I phrase it in the, how much beauty do you want to bring into the world? And what does that look like in the next 10 years? And then bring that down to, okay, what's your life look like 3 short years from now, right? What are you doing? What are the things that define your life 3 years from now? And now let's set a plan year after year, quarter after quarter to go and achieve all that. So the same thing that I bring them through for their business overall, just walk them through for them personally and their family and what that looks like for whatever time frame they want to look at that.
I think we got a
Yeah.
subject. Yeah, go ahead, Joey. Yeah, go.
I was just going to say, one of the things that you're striving for in your business is to find your highest and best use. What are the things that you and only you can do in the business? And you should be leveraging people for most of the other things. That highest and best use on the day you sell the business isn't going to change. If your highest and best use was mentoring and developing leaders in your organization, you're still going to need to scratch that itch. And you might be able to play golf 4 days a week for a year, but eventually you're going to get tired and you're going to have to scratch that itch. So just like
Yeah.
Tina and Jeff were saying, play the tape forward 3 years and say, how am I going to be able to leverage this highest and best use 3 years from now? And that should give you some insight into whether that's philanthropy, whether that's mentorship, whether that's starting it. For a vast majority of sellers in their 50s and 60s, that is going to be starting another business.
Amen. I think we got a whole nother subject we can spend a lot of time on. I think it's actually deep, and I've had people come to the table, sellers, and then can't execute because they're not prepared to cross over that other line with their lives, and they had to go back and do that work. That's a great thing out there. So anyway, we're well past our time, which is great because we got energy. If we can cut the recording off, that's good. Anybody want to stick around for a few minutes? We usually leave the lines open. You guys were amazing. Thank you, and thank you for the questions that we brought in as well. So we'll officially end this part of it. And if anybody wants to stick around for a few minutes, usually we keep the lines open and chat. Michael, you got any inputs on that? That's all quiet. That's good.
The answer is yes. Let me unmute myself. You know, I spend so much time in the moderator role
Yeah.
that it was such a delight and pleasure to sit back and just kind of watch this unfold. But I am grateful and amazed at the quality of the advice and the collaboration that I saw take place. And I hope everyone that's sitting on that panel finds a way to continue together. A lot of the questions that came up, and even the question I raised, we have members who touch on all these places, and we are the only group that does succession, exit, and transition planning with people collaborating around that. So the word blown away is kind of overused, but I'm really, really impressed, Brian, with how you put the group together and how you got to get them to open and speak from their heart. And everyone exhibited what I always talk about, servant's heart, love collaboration, had the hubris beat out. I mean, we've got seasoned people here who love helping business owners, love working on teams and making a difference. So thank you.
And so, Michael, is this your birthday today, by the way? I just saw somebody.
Oh, yeah. Today I turned 72. It was a full moon when I got up. It was cool. It was dry. There were no bugs. And I wasn't moderating. I just got to sit back and really enjoy. So thank you very much for that shout out, Brian. And I'll be busy today. I won't finish tonight till about 7. And my wife asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, maybe we should grab whoever is available in our family and go have some sushi on Saturday. So I think that's how I'll do that.
Sushi on Saturday. That's beautiful.
The other thing I want to say is I see a lot of new names here, and I would encourage anyone who saw this or knows that this particular event's going up on our website to go to btctampa.com and to share this. We'd love to hear more about what you thought about this. If you get so excited that you figure you want to join us, you go to the membership place. There's everyone fills out an application. I call your referral sources. This is a group that is very tight knit. We just don't let anybody in, but we want those people who exhibit that. And we charge a small nominal fee of $150 a year, and we do that really to pay for administrative support. So if you're a new member and you've seen this for the first time and go, wow, I've never seen a group like this, go to the website, explore, and my number is 813-546-2203. Feel free to reach out to me personally, and I'll be glad to talk to you. And I'm going to go ahead and put my number up here if anybody has any personal questions about the group.
There you go. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for your
Um,
time.
Before you go, Brian, I just wanted to give a shout out to Michael
There you go.
to thank him so very much for that amazing referral. Gentleman's name is also Brian,
There you
the
go.
gentleman over at MacDill. And so thank you ever so much. Most appreciated.
Nice. Fantastic.
Yeah, one of the things that I do, and people kind of chuckle about this, it's one of my pleasures. I'm a serial connector and a catalyst, and those are two positive or could be dangerous personality traits as a visionary type person. But I'm constantly looking, who do I know and what do they not know about each other, and how can I put them together for a coffee or a lunch or a cocktail to let them gel and let them, because I've heard from both of them, there's a business opportunity here. How do I get them together? And so I was able to do that for a couple of our members, and I do that on a regular basis. And so that's why I reach out to everyone and trying to ask some of these questions I ask, because I'm curious about how I can help everyone do what we practice and, walk the walk, which is collaborate. Thank you, Ingrid.
Blessings. Thank you, guys.